You Can't Run from Debt. Written by Bookish Penguin. Read by Arashi. Anatoly, agent in training, and newly dispatched from the motherland to be stationed at Northland Bank for active duty, wants to be useful to his superiors. Often, this means cleaning up after senior agents and getting assigned patrol slots that no one else wants to take. But this all changes today. Yes, because today, in fact, right now, in this very moment, Harbinger Tartaglia is waving him over. Anatoly all but launches out of his seat and sprints across the office to answer his summon, skidding to a stop in a salute. "Sir!" Lord Tartaglia gives him a brief glance over. "Recruit Anatoly. He remembers my name. At your service, sir. I have a job for you. Pretty high-priority debt collection." Tartaglia drops a folded note onto his hand. "I'd like you to settle it as soon as possible. Think you can handle it?" By the Tsaritsa, how long has he waited to hear those words? "Thank you, sir. I'll get it done by the end of the night, sir." Something in Lord Tartaglia's expression softens. He laughs and claps him on the shoulder as he leaves. "Good luck on your first mission. Have Fedor and Irene accompany you if you like. You're all pals, aren't you?" Oh, he's so nice. And to think that he'd heard so many horror stories in the barracks about the fearsome 11th. Perhaps they got on his bad side. But that couldn't be Anatoly, for by the end of the day, he'll make Lord Tartaglia see how good he is at his job. "We won't let you down, sir!" He salutes again. "All right, I'll hold you to that." Tartaglia gives him a backhand wave before he disappears around the hallway corner. With shaking fingers, Anatoly unfolds the instructions given to him. Within the folded slip is a single name, Zhonglin. They have their eyes on the target. For someone on the Fatui's watch list for owing a debt amounting to the millions, he's sure making no attempts to conceal himself. The man's presence is almost radiant, arresting and sun-like, attracting all manners of admiring glances as he strides down the street with a nobleman's calm poise and dignity. "Are you sure that's him?" Anatoly whispers. "Affirmative." Fedor materializes from the shadows. "Zhonglin of the Wangsheng Funeral Parlor. Everyone knows that name." "Well, the intel does say he's wearing a ponytail and a slick waistcoat." Irene looks up from his file. "That checks out. We're tailing him." They slink across the roofs, following the target downtown. He enters Liuai Pavilion, elegantly weaving past mingling guests and waiters, balancing decadent dishes on their arms, only to stop at the table that seated Lord Tartaglia? Anatoly shoves his nose against the window. "What's he doing here?" "Oh, that's our Lord Harbinger for you." Irene barks a laugh. "Already onto the prey before us." They watch Lord Tartaglia rise with a smile, playfully lowering into a bow as he pulls a chair out for the consultant. The latter laughs, taking his seat. He reaches for the teapot and fills both their cups, offering one to Lord Tartaglia. Their fingers brush as he takes the cup, and each of them leans in closer towards the other as they begin to converse. Anatoly has to consciously shut his gaping mouth. They look awfully close. It's just an act. The Harbingers love to play with their food, don't you know? Irene scoffs. They keep watching. Nothing short of a feast is delivered to them, and Anatoly is quite certain that any 3 dishes on that table is already worth more than his monthly pay packet. Lord Tartaglia gives his companion a close-eyed grin, gesturing to his mouth. The consultant indulges him, picking up a piece of shrimp and feeding it to him. Anatoly feels his face grow warm. What exactly are they watching here? "Cozying up to your kill shortly before their demise," Fedor grumbles. "This is a Harbinger's idea of fun." An hour later, they have to relocate their vantage point to the roof when the pair leaves the restaurant and steps out onto the open street. Lord Tartaglia smiles again at his companion. Sure, He's quite generous with his smiles, but never this generous. I'll see you tonight, Xiansheng. Tonight, when Anatoly had promised to be done with the assignment, his eyes slowly widen in realization. That confirms it, Irene says into his ear. Down in the street, the consultant nods, joining the stream of the crowd, meandering down Feiyuan's slope. Just when Anatoly is about to give the signal to follow, Lord Tartaglia turns around, his smile dimming. He raises his gaze and looks straight at them. A shadow falls over his face. His eyes narrow. What is that look? Anatoly starts to tremble. Someone seizes him by the back of his hood, shaking him hard. It's Irene. You idiot! He's telling us to get moving. We've wasted enough time confirming if we've got the right target. Right! When he looks back down, there is no sign of Lord Tartaglia. He swallows the lump of fear in his throat. There was no need to be so cautious in the first place. Fedor spits, unsheathing his blade. We'll finish this quickly. They find their target at Jigyu Antiques. He motions for the shopkeeper to bring out something from the back, and she sets down a very large and rather unsightly vase onto the counter. The target brings a hand to his chin, appraising it carefully. Whatever objective the target has for examining the vase so closely, it takes him hours to accomplish. Anatoly has never known that time could move so slowly, or that a singular vase could be capable of demanding a man's complete and unceasing attention. They wait, and wait, and wait. Anatoly can sense his comrade's impatience boiling over. He has to stop them twice from leaping down and abducting their target in broad daylight, as heads would definitely roll then. Then, at long last, thank the Tsaritsa, the target gives the shopkeeper a nod. She looks greatly relieved, shifting the beads on an abacus, as he pats down his pockets in search of his wallet. With a pleased expression, he produces a large bag of mora, carrying the insignia of the Northland Bank, which the shopkeeper happily empties into her coffers. This guy's really pissing me off. Fedor snarls. Who the hell spends 5 million more on a stupid dirt vase, while owing our bank 10 million more? He'd better have some left to cough up later. Irene grinds a knuckle into his palm. Or we could beat it out of him. The target receives his vase and turns into a secluded alleyway. Finally, the chance they've been waiting for. Anatoly strikes first, landing soundlessly in front of the target with his blades drawn. It's time to pay your dues, Mr. Zhonglin. The target doesn't flinch. He doesn't even blink. If anything, he looks a little confused. Cold sweat begins to bead on Anatoly's temple. It may be his first mission, but he's pretty sure they're supposed to give a bigger reaction than that. Fedor and Irene land behind the target, blocking all possible points of escape. Nowhere to run now. Irene's face twists into a sneering grin as he slowly advances towards him. If you come quietly with us, you might get to go home today with all 4 limbs intact. The target interrupts him. A moment, please. If this is leading to a tussle, I would greatly prefer it if this vase is not caught in the crossfire. It is an exquisite piece, you see, and I have been looking forward to obtaining it for a few weeks now. Are you mocking us? Irene swings out a high kick. The target extends an arm, as if to summon a shield, but Anatoly slashes the chain fastening his geovision to his coat, and kicks it away, and out of reach of its wielder. Zhonglin hesitates, his eyes following the skid of his vision. That slight second is all Anatoly needs to pin him against the wall and immobilize his limbs with cryo. Zhonglin frowns. He tenses briefly against the ice. It's no use, Anatoly tells him. No one can break out of there. At least, not a mere man. Zhonglin stills and gives him a cryptic smile. It is as you say. Fedor's boots stomp over the broken shards of his vase. He yanks Zhonglin's head back by his hair, baring the exposed line of his throat. When his golden eyes narrow, Fedor slams his head against the wall with an audible crack, and Anatoly can't help the shudder of horror that runs through him. "Tie him up nice and good." Fedor dusts his hands, stepping away. "I'm going to make him pay for wasting our time." When the burlap sack is ripped off his head, Zhongli surveys his surroundings with mild interest. An interrogation chamber, located deep beneath the respectable foyer of the Northland Bank. It is fitted with a heavy steel door, and next to it is a table lined with an array of blood-stained instruments. It does not take much creativity to imagine what they must be for. Zhongli tests the give of his binds. There is none. His hands are tied together at the back of the chair, ankles chained to the ground. Ordinarily, he would be able to make his escape with no difficulty, but he has become rather proud of maintaining his mortal facade. Something as minor as kidnapping and the threat of torture shouldn't undo all of his good progress so far. A fist socks across his face and leaves his head cracking sideways, and the taste of iron blooms across his tongue. "That was to make sure you're properly awake," his captor snarks, pulling back his fist. It is lined with a brass knuckle. "Now, Mr. Zhonglin, are you wondering why you're here? I suppose anyone would in this situation." His head cracks to the other side. The pang of iron intensifies. His captor is certainly not pulling his punches. Quite literally. "I'd warn you not to get cocky with us, but by all means, please do." His hair is seized by the roots, forcing him to stare into leering blue eyes. Icy, almost translucent, not at all like child's. "It gives me more reason to bloody you up." Zhongli has lost interest, but he does not look away. This time, a boot strikes him hard in the chest, and his chair skids back a few inches, chains rattling from the impact. It rips through his shirt and digs into his flesh, and he sees why. The sole of it is spiked. He glances down at his weeping chest. That is strange. Where did his coat go? His captor advances on him again, a curved blade spinning in the heart of his palm. He scrapes the tip lightly along the edge of Zhongli's cheek, leaving behind a burning trail. Beads of blood trickle onto his chin. "A stoic one, aren't you?" The blade moves lower, ghosting across his jugular. "They'll usually all start screaming at this point." Fyodor?" Someone clears their throat, a tad uncomfortable. "The dead?" Zhongli exhales through his nose when the agent pulls back. Fyodor raises his hands in mock apology. "Looks like I got carried away. So, regarding your little debt, how much was it again, Anatoly?" 10,500,000 mora. The voice answers. It belongs to the agent keeping watch at the door, who can't seem to meet Zhongli's eyes. "You heard him." The blade returns, hovering over his sternum. Distantly, Zhongli recalls a burning spear he had pierced through the same spot, dealt from the hand of a maddened god. He had impaled the god through the heart, with the same spear still embedded in him. Those were the days of youth. "I have been told I can be careless with my funds, but surely not to that extent." Zhongli attempts to shrug. A dangerous spark flashes in Fedor's eyes. His knife descends, and Zhongli's eyelids twitch when a burning pain erupts from his thigh. Around the wound, blood rapidly seeps through the ruined fabric. He bites back a sigh. That will be a chore to wash out, and he'll be needing Child's help to mend the tear. Child would be more than happy to help, as always. Yes, he can see it clearly. His husband, perched on the bed, with a needle and piece of thread, humming as he elegantly stitches up the hole in the fabric. "Perhaps I can jog your memory for you." Fedor's lower half blurs, and a heavy kick across his face interrupts the wonderful daydream he was having. His chair topples sideways and onto the ground, his skull cracking against the tiles. Immediately, his captor rounds up on him and strikes him repeatedly in the torso with his boot, filling the chamber walls with dull but savage thuds of heavy impact. It goes on for a long time, enough for Zhongli to start feeling a little affronted. He can hardly breathe when it's over, and the spasming pain ricocheting up and down his spine whenever he tries to take in a crackling breath tells him that his ribs must be broken. It's been a while since he's felt pain like this. It takes him back. A sudden knock on the door gives Fedor pause. He breathes hard as Anatoly relays the message over. "Lord Tartaglia has returned!" Fedor's smile widens. "Excellent!" They unchain his ankles and cut him free from the chair. Zhongli makes a face of displeasure when a noose is tightened around his neck, serving as a leash for his captors to tug him forward at will. "Come," Fedor commands. "A visit to our lord is in order." The burlap sack is thrown over his head again. Zhongli would really rather they not. It gives off a potent stench of fish, and his sense of smell is still as keen as ever, even after they have broken his nose. Rather unfortunate, really. He is dragged by the neck somewhere upstairs. Through the gaps in between the woven cloth, his eyes catch faint pinpricks of light and the shine of polished tiles. The main foyer, then. Several hushed whispers reach his ears. He hears small talk, raging from the long workday and the unfortunate debtor, waiting to be judged by Lord Tartaglia. Some make bets on whether they'll have to scrub his blood off the tiles in a few moments. The whispers cease when a door opens. Footsteps pass by him. Boots stamp together. "Lord Tartaglia!" A chorus of voices greet. "At ease." From the bottom of his head sack, Zhongli sees a familiar pair of boots enter his vision. Child must be seated on a chair before him, with his legs crossed. Another pair of shoes steps into view. "Your tea, Master Child." "Thanks." There's a clink of glass. Then a pause. "Bit oversteeped."
"My apologies."
The server retreats hurriedly.
"I will have to consult Master Zhongli about the proper way to brew this blend of leaves."
Child's voice softens. "Good idea." Fedor speaks up. "Lord Harbinger, sir, we have managed to capture the man as requested." "Report." The cold edge of indifference returns to his voice. "As you command," says Anatoly, above the sound of flipping pages. "His name is Zhonglin. His debts amount to 10,500,000 mora, fully unpaid, even after 2 weeks past the agreed deadline." "Well," he feels the weight of Child's gaze fall on him. "What do you have to say for yourself?" A heavy blow at the back of his knees forces him to kneel before him. "On your knees before the Lord Harbinger!" Fedor barks. "And where's your respect? Look at him while you're talking." Zhongli's head is forced upright by a harsh tug on his leash. For the first time this evening, irritation grips him. He has half a mind to reach back and put that uncouth nuisance in his place. But these are Child's subordinates, not his, and a part of him is rather curious to see how this will unfold. His voice is hoarse from the deep bruise on his throat. "Good evening." The burlap sack is ripped off him. His eyes narrow at the sudden influx of light. As he squints up at the figure seated before him, he realizes his left eye has swollen shut. Child. Child has his cheek splayed against one palm, leaning sideways in his chair. With his other, he drums a finger rhythmically upon his propped knee, half-lidded eyes momentarily surveying someone past Zhongli's shoulder. As they lower, so do they widen fractionally, until he stares unblinkingly at Zhongli for a moment, as if unable to reconcile his face with the bruised and battered body kneeling before him. Not a whisper stirs within the walls of the bank. From behind the receptionist counter, Ekaterina has gone very still. The young man who had served Child his tea drops his tray and promptly passes out onto the floor. Vlad and Nadia make hurried hand gestures at each other before dragging his limp body out of sight. "Zhongli!" Child's mask of cold composure is nowhere to be seen. He looks horrified, dropping into a crouch before him. And then his hands are everywhere, gently sweeping the hair out of his face, peeling back his collar to let the curls around his neck breathe, running up and down his sides to check for injuries. Zhongli must have let slip a grimace, because Child's hands freeze, and he pulls back with a low apology. What? How? I'm afraid you must ask your subordinates, for there seems to have been a great misunderstanding. Child's eyes darken rapidly, but the private smile he gives Zhongli is no less affectionate. Wait for me, Melish. A soft smile is pressed to his temple, and Child rises to his feet. The vision at his belt flares a bright and vengeful blue. Hydro swords coalesce in his palms. Zhongli turns back to see Fedor, Anatoly, and their remaining colleague, trembling harder than young shoots in a storm. Lord Harbinger, we don't understand. Anatoly prostrates, with his head touching the floor. Have we offended you in some way? Fedor pleads. Their hairs stand on end at the crackle of violet electricity. Child comes to a stop before them, and his face is a frightful mass of shadow, making his agents whimper and clutch at each other for support. You have 30 seconds to explain before I take your heads. Child's voice is frighteningly measured. We're following instructions to capture Zhonglin, as written on our mission slip. Anatoly has yet to lift his head off the ground. Fedor posited the target to be Zhonglin of the Wangsheng Funeral Parlor, later confirmed by Idini, and I... Confirmed? Child's eyes are so dark, they are almost black. On what grounds? His appearance, sir. The ponytail and waistcoat, as recorded in our files. And by you, sir. Violet lightning streaks across the ceiling in webs. The air is ripe with the smell of a storm brewing over the sea. The agents cower and whimper. Me? We thought your meeting with the target confirmed it, sir. Anatoly stammers. Why else were the two of you together on the day of the mission? Fedor cries. And that look you gave when you two left the restaurant! Irene yells. Weren't you telling us that we got the right guy and to speed things along? Oh dear. Zhongli stands, dusts the dirt off his clothes, and takes a much-needed rest in Child's chair. He helps himself to the cup of tea that Child left untouched on the side table. It is oversteeped, as he'd said. We were dining together because Zhongli is my husband. Child seethes. And I looked your way only because I did not appreciate our meal being watched by outsiders. Fedor swings an arm out, desperate. But you said you'll see him tonight! Isn't that the code for our midnight executions? With every word that leaves their mouths, Child looks more and more murderous. He is my husband. We live together. I see him every night. The remaining color on the recruits' faces drain away. Husband? Irene echoes, collapsing into a sprawl after losing strength in his legs. Husband! We laid hands on our Lord Harbinger's husband! He yanks Anatoly up by the collar and shakes him frantically. Isn't that punishable by death? Judging from the foam bubbling from the corner of Anatoly's mouth, he must be swiftly approaching death himself. Zhongli sets his cup down and pushes it away. He turns at the sound of a polite cough behind him. Miss Ekaterina.
Master Zhongli.
Sir. She offers him a new cup, a rich brew, and a vast improvement from before, and he drinks it with relish. She hugs the tray to her chest, ashamed. I know it is too much to ask for your forgiveness. Our new recruits are idiots. He waits for her to come to their defense. She does not. Instead, she gives him a small bow.
Please excuse me while I get in touch with their emergency contacts. I expect that their loved ones will be receiving their caskets soon.
Irene shrieks and lets go of Anatoly, who flops lifelessly onto the tiles, like a gutted fish. Fedor has gone silent, seemingly resigned to his imminent fate. He puts his hands together and begins praying to the Tsaritsa. Zhongli is uncertain about the effectiveness of this, whilst in another god's domain. Now then. Child slams his swords together into a twirling glaive. What was it that you guys liked to say again? You can't run from debt? He raises his glaive up like a scythe. That's certainly true. His weapon descends. The recruits let out a blood-curdling scream, which petters out into a confused whimper when the blade halts a hair's breadth away from their necks. But it's only fair that Zhongli gets to decide where you'll end up. Child turns sideways to flash him a conspiratorial smirk, his glaive dispersing into harmless vapor. Zhongli smiles serenely at the recruits as he lifts the lid of his tea. They balk at this, and their uttered prayers swiftly resume. I suppose I could think of one or two appropriate punishments. At the height of a blazing afternoon, they lounge on a chaise beneath the cooling shade of a tuewa tree. Child's fingers trace lightly over the bandages wrapped around his skin, an unhappy frown settling between his brows. In his lap, Zhongli chuckles, catching hold of his palm and pressing a kiss into it. You could have easily stopped them. Child murmurs, Why did you let yourself get hurt? Zhongli hums, enjoying the rhythmic motions of fingers combing through his loose hair. Perhaps it was in hopes that I could spend an idyllic afternoon with you like this. Child sighs in exasperation, rolling his eyes. Silly old dragon. He looks up, and at the nearby excavation site, where 3 Fatui agents are being forced to dig under the blazing sun with cruelly small shovels. You 3, report your progress! The agents startle and immediately answer his call.
Lord Harbinger and Master Zhongli, sir!
They carefully present a few shards, trinkets, and valuables that they have unearthed from the ruins, prostrating themselves before Zhongli as he carefully appraises them. They are each exquisite in their own right, but, unfortunately, nowhere near the value of the vase you had broken that day. Zhongli shakes his head. The recruits bury their faces in their hands, their despair immeasurable. Please, we've been at it for hours! It's way too hot. I can't feel my arms anymore. Child silences them with a glare. Back to work. And don't bother coming back this time if you don't have something to show for it. The recruits drift back to their posts like lost ghouls, shrieking at the harsh sting of sunlight once they step out of the shade. Child catches the look on Zhongli's face and snorts. Are you enjoying this? Immensely, Zhongli admits.